Okay, let's do passage 3. Blue holes of the Bahamas. Paragraph 1. The Bahamas, a series of semi-tropical islands off the southeast coast of the United States, which are home to some of the most unusual geologic formations in the world, underwater caves known as blue holes. Okay. The which right there is probably unnecessary. Let's reread it without the which. The Bahamas, a series of semi-tropical islands off the southeast coast of the United States, are home to some of the most unusual geologic formations in the world. I think it makes more sense without the which. So it's one of these three where we change it. So here it looks like one of the options is to get rid of the which and the are. So we would end up saying, off the southeast coast of the United States, home to some of the... That's awkward. So it's between B and C. We've narrowed it down to between B and C. And now we're looking at the Bahamas, a series of semi-tropical islands off the southeast coast of the United States, are home to some of the most unusual geologic formations. And we need to know whether there's a comma after states. To know that, we'll look back at the beginning of the sentence. There's a comma right here, right after Bahamas, which means that begins this as a phrase, starting at a series. That's a phrase. So we're going to see if we could remove that and it would still read as a sentence. The Bahamas are home to some of the most unusual geologic formations. Yes, that still works. So we need that comma after states to keep this as an independent phrase. So B, 31 is B. Let's double check. 31 is B because a series, that whole phrase I was talking about it's called an A-positive phrase that further describes the Bahamas. An A-positive phrase is one that you can remove from the sentence and the sentence would still work. This phrase is non-restrictive and must be set off by commas. The verb are is also needed to avoid a sentence fragment. Okay. Underwater caves known as blue holes. A. They've set that apart for some reason, so they'll probably ask a question about that at some point. These vertical caves were formed over thousands of years, and their cold depths provide abundant clues to the island's past. Paragraph 2. 32. During the formation process, tiny grains of calcium carbonate separated from the seawater. Given that all the following statements are true, which one, if added, would most effectively introduce the topic of this paragraph? See, it just says during the formation process, like it's already talking about formation process, so it needs some sort of introduction. The Bahamas were formed from calcium carbonate, a component of seawater. Calcium carbonate, a common rock substance, is also found in seawater. Much of the land making up the Bahamas is still underwater. Most types of limestone contain calcium carbonate. I'm gonna guess at F for a second, because it's the first one, and I'm gonna put it in front of this and see if that works. The Bahamas were formed from calcium carbonate, a component of seawater. During the formation process, tiny grains of calcium carbonate separated from the seawater. See that? That makes sense. Tells us that it's a component of the seawater and then tells us that it's separated from the seawater. And that repetition of the word seawater gives us parallelism. So that makes sense. I'm going to say 32 is F. 32 is F. Because the paragraph focuses on the formation of the caves, and this choice most logically introduces the topic. These grains built up, then compacted, forming the limestone that makes up the island. The grains of calcium carbonate separated, that's past tense. Built up is also past tense. Our building is present perfect. Will build is future. These grains build up, then compacted. See, that's a tense change. Build up is present tense. We needed to stay in the past tense, so no change. 33 is A, no change. Past tense is A because the simple past tense built is consistent with the verb tense of the rest of the paragraph. These grains built up, then compacted, forming the limestone that makes up the islands. B. Over time, rainwater permeated the porous limestone but was trapped just above sea level, buoyed by the denser seawater below. Jostled back and forth by tides, the layer... Oh, that's a different sentence altogether. So let's stick with this. Over time, rainwater permeated the porous limestone but was trapped just above sea level, buoyed by the denser seawater below. But was trapped just above sea level, being buoyed because of the denser seawater below. No, the being throws me off. Yeah, it's a different tense. But was trapped just above the sea level, it being buoyed by. Again, all these have an ing. So I'm gonna guess no change. So let's see, 34, no change. Best answer. Oh, sorry, F. Yes, 34 is F. The rest had an ing, and it was all supposed to be past tense. So we want to keep it ing. Stay away from the ing. Because this choice represents the clearest, most concise, most idiomatic way to say the rainwater was buoyed by the seawater below. Yeah, see, this has got the ed, and this has got the ing. Jostled back and forth by tides, the layer of slightly acidic, brackish water eroded limestone faster than either rainwater or seawater could alone. Okay, so it uses these dashes to set off seawater. And I don't really think it needs to set the seawater off because the point they're making is that this acidic water on top is different from the rainwater or the seawater. And the rainwater and the seawater do the same essential thing to the limestone. So there's rainwater, there's the layer on top that the rainwater becomes, and then there's the seawater underneath it. And they're talking about this layer of slightly acidic water. Since they're comparing it to rainwater or seawater, we're going to change it. So let's look at the changes. This one set it off with commas, which does essentially the exact same thing that setting it off with dashes does. So we're going to say no to B, because if we're going to change it, we don't need it to do the exact same thing it was already doing. So then the other options are 1 comma or no commas. So let's look at 1 comma. Let's read it with a pause. The layer of slightly acidic brackish water eroded limestone faster than either rainwater or seawater could alone. Yeah, that's an awkward pause. So we're going to go with D. No commas at all. No commas, no punctuation, just rainwater and seawater together. D on 35. Yes, D. Because the word either in the sentence indicates that the brackish water is being compared to two things at the same time, rainwater and seawater. The omission of punctuation is appropriate and indicates that these two nouns are parallel elements in the construction of either rainwater or seawater. So it didn't even occur to me that the word either was a dead giveaway. Yeah, either rainwater or seawater. As the limestone eroded caves formed, that is a sentence fragment. So something needs to change there. As the limestone eroded, comma, caves formed. Yes, as the limestone eroded, comma, caves formed. H. 36H. 36H, because the introductory adverb, as the limestone eroded, must be separated from the main clause, caves formed, by a comma. So caves is the subject of the sentence, formed is the verb of the sentence. And since it's an intransitive verb, you don't need another noun. You don't need like caves. The caves aren't creating something else. The caves are being formed. So caves formed is a sentence on its own. And see, the way I read it, as the limestone eroded caves, I was reading it with dashes in between limestone eroded and caves. I was reading that as a noun phrase, as, you know, limestone eroded caves. As a type of cave, which kind of cave is it? It's a limestone eroded cave. That's what I was reading it as. So I read it as a fragment. But if we say, this is a verb, as the limestone eroded, comma, caves formed. Okay, 3. Over time, we need a comma after over time. That is an introductory phrase. Which choice most specifically illustrates how long the cave creating process took? Oh, no. I'm sorry, I stopped too early. Over time periods in which the weather changed drastically. See, time periods is a phrase. I messed that up. I read it wrong. Over time periods in which the weather changed drastically, sea levels rose and fell by hundreds of feet. Which choice most specifically illustrates how long the cave creating process took? Between ice ages and the more temperate eras that followed them, sea levels rose and fell by hundreds of feet. During this extended time or as time passed, if we know our like 6th grade science, we know that the ice age lasted thousands of years, and each ice age lasts thousands of years. So I'm going to say B. 37 is B. Yes. Best answer is B, because this choice provides the most specific indication of time. Both ice ages and temperate eras speak to large swaths of time and indicate that a great deal of time passed during the cave formation process. So yeah. So over time periods does say something about time passage, but it doesn't give us that sense of grand scale of time as well as ice ages does. This allowed the cave creating process to be a process that repeated at different depths hundreds of feet apart. This allowed the cave creating process to repeat again and again at various different depths. This allowed the cave creating process to repeat at different depths that varied. That's a little awkward. This allowed the cave creating process to repeat at different depths. Huh. I like G the most, but I feel like they're going to not say that because they can be kind of difficult. But I'm going to go with G. 38 is G. J. Dang, I got it wrong. This allowed the cave creating process to repeat at different depths. The again and again that's creative writing. That's the way I would write it because it drives the point home really well, but it's also redundant. So it's not G because repeat again and again is redundant. Yeah. Different depths that varied is unnecessarily wordy and redundant. This choice is unnecessarily wordy and redundant. So they want the most concise way to say it. This allowed the cave creating process to repeat at different depths. Yeah. So, man, I'm so disappointed in myself. Okay. The roofs of many caves collapsed, leaving the chambers beneath exposed. Some of these blue holes opened to small, contained caves. Others opened to miles-long, interconnected tunnels. Okay. So we need a punctuation after caves because we're introducing what could almost be its own sentence. Others open to mile-long, interconnected tunnels. So let's see. It's got to change, so it's not A. Let's look at B. Caves that Some of these blue holes open to small contained caves that others open up. No, that's awkward. That's weird. So it's either a comma or a semicolon. Some of these blue holes open to small contained caves. That could be its own sentence, right? You could put a period after that and it would be fine. Others open to miles-long interconnected tunnels. This could also be its own sentence, like I said before. So then what we need is something that would connect two sentences without a conjunction, and that's a semicolon. So C. 39 is C because the semicolon correctly separates the two independent clauses. Perfect. Okay. 40. At this point, the writer is considering adding the following true sentence. At 663 feet deep, Dean's Blue Hole in Long Island, Bahamas is a popular cave diving destination. Should the writer make this addition here? We've been talking about the process of like the geologic time scale. So going to something so specific as one specific hole and the number of feet it is deep is kind of a jarring transition. I'm going to say no. So I'm going to get rid of F and G right away. I'm going to look at H and J. No, because it offers a detail that is unrelated to the paragraph's focus on cave creating process. I like that explanation right there. No, because it does not provide an adequate description of Dean's Blue Hole. I'm going to go with H. 40 is H. Because the specific information of Dean's Blue Hole is a popular cave diving destination is not related to the focus of the paragraph, which is on cave formation in general. Right, it went from the general to the specific. It was too jarring of a change. Okay. The telltale sign of a blue hole is a circular patch of water striking darker than the rest of the surrounding. Okay. Imagine if we got rid of the word striking. The telltale sign of a blue hole is a circular patch of water darker than the water surrounding them. So that means that this word, striking, should be describing the word darker. Now, darker is an adjective, or is it an adverb? Well, it's a circular patch of water, darker. Darker is an adjective. So if it's describing an adjective, that means it's an adverb. So we need an ly. Strikingly darker. There we go. Strikingly darker. 41 is B. Because the noun water must be modified by the adjective darker, and the adjective darker should be modified by the adverb strikingly. This is the only choice that uses the correct adjective and adverb forms of these words. Okay. The telltale sign of a blue hole is a circular patch of water strikingly darker than the water surrounding it. That should be it. Because telltale sign of a circular patch of water strikingly, it's one singular circular patch. So you would describe it as it, not as them. It's not multiple of the holes. It's just one hole. So you would describe it as it. Because it's a thing. 42 is J. Yes, 42 is J, because the pronoun it is appropriate given the context and agrees in number with the antecedent, a circular patch of water. Where are we? C. Divers have found the remains of turtles and alligators. Well, that's sort of random. The darker water indicates greater depth. Divers have found the remains of turtles and alligators, now extinct on the island's stalactites. Oh, okay. Stalactites and stalagmites from a time when the caves were above sea level and artifacts of early human inhabitants. Divers have found the remains of turtles and alligators now extinct on the island. My first instinct is to put a comma after alligators, but that's not an option. See, not an option. So I've got to say, divers have found the remains of turtles and alligators now. No, that's nonsense. Divers have found the remains of turtles and alligators now extinct on, possibly. Divers have found the remains of turtles and alligators now extinct. And then if we put the period there and then we start a new sentence with on, then we would say, on the island, stalactites and stalagmites from a time when the caves were above sea level and artifacts of early human inhabitants, which creates one big sentence fragment. It's long, but it's still a sentence fragment. So all of that has to go together. All of this has to go together. Divers have found all of these things. So the only one that does that is C. 43 is C, because the sentence presents a list of 3 findings of divers, the first of which is remains of turtles and alligators now extinct on the island. Hundreds of blue holes can be sighted off the Bahamas. Which choice most effectively suggests the shape of blue holes as described earlier in the essay? Okay, so can be sighted doesn't describe the shape of the holes at all, right? It just says you can see them. If you say it dots the waters, hundreds of blue holes dot the waters, we know that a dot is a circle. So that's a likely candidate right there. Hundreds of blue holes darken parts of the Bahamas. Well, no, the Bahamas are islands. They don't darken the islands. They darken the waters surrounding the islands. Hundreds of blue holes appear in the Bahamas. Again, that does the same thing as can be sighted. It just says you can see them. It doesn't say anything about the shape of them. And the question asks about the shape of the blue hole. So we got to go with dot the waters. G. 44 is G. Yep. The word dot, a small round mark, indicates the circular shape of the blue holes. Exactly. Question 45 asks about the preceding passage as a whole. The writer wants to add the following sentence to the essay. In these depths, fossils and ancient rock formations are incredibly well preserved. This sentence would most logically be placed at point A. Let's look at point A. Some of the most unusual geologic underwater caves known as holes. At these depths is how it starts. It says at these depths. We haven't said anything about depths yet, so let's not put it there. Where's B? B. Forming limestone. Okay. These grains built up and compacted, forming the limestone that makes up the islands. At these depths, let's look at the sentence again. In these depths, fossils and ancient rock formations are incredibly well preserved. Where'd B go? B. Again, it didn't say anything about depths or anything comparative to depths. It's just talking about the formation of the caves. So let's find C. C, right here. Oh, depth. There's the word depth. Telltale sign of blue holes, circular patch of water strikingly darker than the water surrounding it. The darker water indicates greater depth. And these depths, what is it again? In these depths, fossils and ancient rock formations are incredibly well preserved. Divers have found the remains of turtles and alligators, now extinct on the island. Stalactites and stalagmites. Okay, yeah, talking about things you've found. So I like C. Let's just double check with D. These depths, fossils of ancient rock formations are incredibly well preserved. Hundreds of blue holes can be sighted off the Bahamas. Now, that's a jarring change. It actually fits with finding things. You know, we're talking about finding fossils, and we're talking about finding remains of turtles and alligators. So 45 is C. Yes. 45 is C, because the placement most logically connects the depths. Okay, so that is it for this section. We'll be hitting passage 4 next time, the Walls of Rome. Please join my Google Meet between, 1:20 to 3:30 if you have any more questions. I'd love to answer them, teach this deeper. I feel like maybe I talk too fast during these videos. So if I am talking too fast and you need to ask me some questions or tell me to slow down, feel free to join in. And then, of course, there's always my phone number, 918-424-1103, if you want to give me a call. Have a good day.